Okay, it's another episode of Reflections, and my guest for this one is going to be Steel, and obviously the Canadian one, use your fucking head. So, I don't speak Portuguese, and the other one just says man a lot.
Thorn with another xenophobic comment, wow.
Okay, well, I like to come out the gate with him, I come out hard. So, obviously, you are a player whose game before CSGO was CS Source, and that's a game myself and actually a lot of people aren't that familiar with because the bigger game was obviously 1.6. So that's actually kind of where I want to start the interview, which is when I find out that someone who was North American, but their first game, or at least the one they played competitively, was CS Source. I'm always curious how they got into that because, like, for example, in the UK, the whole scene basically moved to CS Source, and there was very few teams that were actually playing in 1.6. So we kind of had a whole shift like that, and the young generation just encountered CS Source first. But in NA, obviously, a lot of people stayed in the world of 1.6. In fact, some of the pros from CGS went back to 1.6, and that was where the professional side, the esports side of things was. So when did you first kind of transition from just being a casual player to the competitive side? And what was it like encountering the NA sourcing? Because it must have been pretty small at the time, right?
Yeah, it was relatively small. So I actually was playing just a variety of games casually. So Warcraft 3, Battlefield 2, Counter-Strike Source, I just played them interchangeably. And I was like a 24/7 CS office player. Like, this is how pub I was. But like, dude, that was so fun though. It was like fun. But there was a website, I don't know if you've heard of it, tournament.com.
Okay.
So that came out and it was a website where you could basically play each other like 3v3s, 5v5s, 1v1s, and stuff like that for money. So you buy in for like $10 into a game, then you can win like $20. Like, this is the original 10 man for wagers type of thing, but there was like a platform that supported it. And same thing, like you could go into like a 20-man deathmatch server, you put in like $5 and you can win like 30 or something like that. So it was basically like playing poker, but you're playing CS instead. So I started playing that about a month before that got shut down. So this is like November 2007. And I was just a pub star at this point. And one of the players that I met through this, his name was Rebel, and he lived in Toronto as well. And he's basically like, yo, man, I think you're good. We should play together sometime. I'm like, okay. So that's when he introduced me to like the other Toronto-based players that he played with. And that's when they invited me to play on their I think they were Cal Open at the time. So we just played Cal Open together. And that's how I kind of got my introduction to the competitive side of CS Source.
Okay. So when you first came up, I saw when I was looking up the teams that you were basically in a bunch of different teams, and it seems like at least once you got to the top competitive level. And the NA teams, though, that I remember was the main core that most people will know was the Dynamic team. Now, what was the rationale behind how you moved around these teams? Because it seems like some of the players are some of the ones you tried to get back later in CSGO for Torqued, etc. Some people you're familiar with then. But the Team Dynamic team, I know, was one of the ones that had a lot of success. So what was like your first big introduction to the competitive side of things, going to the big lands, not just local Canadian ones?
So I was always trying to like punch above my weight the entire way through. 6 months into playing competitively, I'm trying to go to all the local Toronto events, all the Montreal-based events. So the ETS, the Core LAN, Atlanta Paloozas, anything I could really play at, I'd try to go there. But then I'd also try to like play with other players that were better than me so I could learn from them and just kind of absorb everything I could like a sponge. So I was trying to play like all the roles. I was trying to learn everything from what I could and try to play and get as much experience as I could. And then I think like every time I learned a little bit, I tried to go too far, like almost like Icarus. I would fly too high, get too close to the sun, then fall. So basically every time like I played with other people that, you know, I learned a lot from, but I wasn't good enough to cut it. Like I would get cut from that team or something like that. And then I'd go back and play with my older friends, bring to them what I learned. And then we would improve as a team a little bit. And then we were able to make it to the next division and the next division. So I kind of like took 2 steps forwards, 1 step back every time I went until I got my first big break. I guess that was when I was still like relatively unknown, but it was when ESEA started doing the CS Source Open.
Yeah.
And some of the players, like it was a team called K2, and they lost to the the dynamic core team in the finals of the first season of Source Open, and then they picked me up like at the end of that season / the beginning of the next season, and I only played with them for like a month or two, and then they cut me. And Monty, who's like, people that know me, they're familiar with him. He went by the name of Neil back then. He was like 16 years old at the time, and he actually pushed for me to get cut. And now I'm still playing with him on Torqued today. So that was like, it's a good experience because I wasn't good, but I was learning a lot. And then I had a chance to do something, and I didn't do too well. But what I learned and the connections I made was able to lead me into making another team in ESEA Open a season or two after these events take place. And then when we won Open and we went straight to Invite, because we're like 15-1 in the regular season, we won Open. And this is when it was Open Main Invite or something like that, or like Open Intermediate Invite, something like that. So that was like my first real break getting into, I guess, like the pro level, just because I was playing with, you know, relatively unknown players that weren't like tournament winners. They weren't winning consistently online. And we were just able to create a team together and then get to the top together. Arguably, there wasn't as much competition, but it was still something like about our mindset, about our attitude and approach and goals with the game that kind of took us there together.
Okay. So as I referenced, a lot of your career in Source, you were playing with this core. A lot of people they'll either know some of the names from early CSGO, or they'll know them from the Torqued teams you made later. But you had this one big tournament where you played with Dynamic, right? Which was the big core in NA, and they took you to the DS Rack LAN, which famously, for everyone who doesn't know, was in Denmark. And in Source, at least, this was one of the bigger tournaments, right?
Right.
So how did you get into that team, and why were you there so briefly?
Okay. So when I got to Invite the first time, I was playing with just whoever I could play with at the time, and we ended up going to ESEA LAN. We got third place together that season. The next season, we got second place, and we lost a Dynamic. And then Dynamic, they were looking to replace Sunman with someone, so they approached me. I was Canadian based. 3 of them were from Montreal, and then Adren's from like Pittsburgh or wherever the fuck he's from. So they approached me. They're like, we like your playstyle. We like how you're consistently performing well. We like that you're Canadian based. We're looking for a fifth. Do you want to play with us? I'm like, hells yeah. I dropped my old team. I joined up with Dynamic. It was relatively short lived. We played in ESEA LAN, which we won together. We played ETS, which we won, and we played at DS Rack in Copenhagen games, where we lost in the finals, the grand finals, to VeryGames at like 4 a.m. or 5 a.m. after, like, we were playing from like 9 a.m. until like 5 a.m. Yeah, we were playing like 9 a.m. to 5 a.m. jet lagged, like it was just awful, and we ended up losing to them. I was like pure zombie mode, but yeah, that's how I made it onto Dynamic. It's they picked me up because of my previous 2 seasons of Invite, plus I was Canadian based, plus I was playing like literally nonstop. I was like one of those no-lifer puggers that just played like 10 pugs a day. Like, I was playing a lot of CS back then, a lot of CS. And I was pretty young at the time. I was like 19 years old, 20 years old.
So obviously, as you referenced, in the final, you got to play against VeryGames, which were, I mean, I realized they changed lineup, but as a core, they were the dominant team over the last couple of years. Famously, they had this like ridiculous stat where they won like 40 lands or something ridiculous. I realized half of those were French lands. They never bother mentioning that part, but they definitely weren't all international lands. But yeah, they were a very dominant team. What were they actually like to play against? Like I want to go on two levels, right? One is the rep that, you know, some of their players were just the best and the tactics were the best and all this stuff. Is there something to that? And on the other end of the equation, I have to also ask, you have to temper it by telling me this. I've heard a lot of stories from everyone who's in Source who isn't French that VeryGames they didn't cheat, but they just used every possible advantage in every setting. So I want both sides of it. What was VeryGames like in Source?
So VeryGames had really talented players on an individual basis, but I think where they came together was together as a team, where the the strats and the meta of CS Source, especially at the time, were very different to how CSGO is today. So flashbangs, even if you weren't looking at them, they would affect you. So like pop flash, counter flash setups, they were really popular. There were no Molotovs. So the dynamic of the game worked out very differently. There were 2-op setups, which were very common. The op was like completely different beasts in CS Source as well. I think tactically, a lot of teams took a lot of concepts and ideas from VeryGames. They had really unique setups. They had really cool pop flash setups. They basically revolutionized the game in many ways with the pop flashes. And in that regard, like, they were one of the tactically best teams out there. And with regards to individual skill, like, they had RPK, he was like the best like rock consistent player ever. You just put him in a spot and he's just going to hold his spot. He's not going to go and, you know, he's not the guy you expect to go and like open up sites and be a huge playmaker, but you don't expect him to just go and feed. He's the guy that's just going to be there consistently, middle of the scoreboard. And if you guys start losing, he's going to be the one that brings you guys back up. You had NBK coming into the scene, and this guy at the time, he was like 17 years old, looked like Justin Bieber. He was like some child prodigy, dude. Yeah, he was like the hybrid player, like the guy that you look at today, like kind of like Stewie 2K is now. This is what NBK was like back then. And then you had Existence, who I didn't think, like, mechanically he wasn't that bad in CS Source. I don't know why he hasn't transferred to CSGO as well. I don't know if it's because of the tactics or because of the mechanical skill, or maybe it's both. He wasn't that bad. And then they had, I believe they had Regnam, and I forget who the last player was. It could have been Smith. I don't know if it was Smith's or was Smith was there at some point, but I don't know which point. And this is like pre Kenny S. This is like a year or two before Kenny S got picked up by VeryGames.
It looks like when you played them, it wasn't Smith. It looks like when you played them, they had NBK, RPK, Existence, Regnum, and Shock, as in Shock with a K. Okay, Shock, yeah, yes.
Shock, yeah, that's right. So Shock was like a budget Shocks. I don't know, like a budget
from the name.
Yeah. He was like they got replaced eventually by Shocks and Smiths and everything. Like Regnam ended up quitting the team not too distant in the future, and then they ended up getting like Kenny S and stuff like that. So Shock didn't live on that team for much longer, but they, as a team, they had, like, I guess RPK, NBK were definitely like two of the better Source players at the time. And then the rest of them just, they were able to do what they needed to do. But together as a team, they came together so well that they were able to beat everyone else. So if they were down, they'd have this good like eco strategy where they'd be able to win the round and swing the momentum. So they had really good tactics and really good composure. And I think that's what kept them going for so long. And that's like a major issue that I had in dynamic. It's like, I guess we'll talk about the dynamic thing later. To address your other point about them using all the exploits they can find, they did do that. So in Source, there was like, kind of in like 1.6, you have like 16-bitting the smoke so you can like see through it and stuff. There was like ambient occlusion, which is a setting you could set on your graphics card. And at the time in CS Source, like you could just see straight through smokes, like they weren't there. You would see like the silhouette. You know how in CSGO, if there's like a smoke up and like there's a grenade that explodes or something and you can like see through it? That's what ambient occlusion was like, except you could just see it at all times. So that was a bit ridiculous. They used that, I believe. They used DX98. So what eventually became the standard was to make everyone use DX level 81. And because DX level 81, flashbangs would actually work properly. If you're looking at them, or you're looking away from them, you're getting blind. Okay, so you have to rely on teamwork. One person's peeking, and if he gets blind, someone else is just launching a flash, or he's hiding completely somewhere else where he can come out and help. And you have to do one of the two things. You can't play alone ever in that game because you'll just get blind and killed. So what DX level 95 and 98 did was, even if you're looking directly at a flashbang, the flash effect maybe lasts a second at most. So it's very, very like reduced, like mild flashbang. And they just use that. I don't know if they discovered it, but they definitely abused it. And they used DX level 98 until tournaments started forcing DX level 81. So things like that. They found things on like AMD cards or something, where it's like you get more FPS or something. They found out that if you have higher FPS, people appear on your screen earlier.
Okay. Yeah,
like
I heard it's because that Regnam guy was like some programmer or something, you know.
Yeah.
So he was just like taking apart CS or something.
Regnam found all those things. They found out something with a net graph. If you have there was 3 different net graphs or something. If you use one of them, the graph would spike when enemies got close. So if you're playing B Inferno and you're playing by the oranges, you would know if someone's walking up close because your net graph somewhere will spike. Or let's say you're playing, I know it's not a CSGO map anymore, but Season, if you're playing the upper A halls as a CT, it would spike when the terrorist got to a certain point. So you'd know, if your thing doesn't spike, no one can be there. But then once it spikes, you're like, okay, there's at least one person here. So it's basically like having kind of like a radar hat, kind of, just knowing oh, there's at least one person here. It's it was really screwed up. Anyways, they found that, they used it, and then tournaments started blocking it. So there was a lot of exploit usage by them, but I think a lot of them got patched up. And even after actually, come to think of it, now at Copenhagen Games 2012, well, they had a different roster by that point, so I don't know. I think even while they were even when tournaments were enforcing okay, DX level 81, so you get blind, and net graph, you're not allowed having it on, or you get the squad, whatever. I think they were still a really good team after all those rules were enforced. But before then, it might have given them an edge. Yeah, it might have.
So I saw that briefly in the team, which was basically Torqued, but you had a bunch of different organization changes. Right. At one point, you actually had DaZeD for an event. You had him for an ESWC event, which at the time, I mean, that was a big deal, by the way, for Source, for people who don't know, to get kind of one of the majors to support the game. So this was a very big tournament. And obviously, it's one that you did well at. You came third.
Yeah.
What the fuck was DaZeD like in Source? Was he at all like he is now? What was he like to play with at the time?
So I haven't really spoken to him too much these days, so I don't know. I can't say now what is he like versus 2 years ago or back on iBUYPOWER. The very first time I met him was my very first ESEA LAN, and I didn't know anyone at the time. I was like, this is my first ESEA LAN. I'm going up to people and introducing myself. I'm like, hey guys, I'm Steele. My name's Josh. I would go up and introduce myself, and then I go up to DaZeD, and he's like, I'm not shaking your hand. Okay. Okay. Okay then. So after Dynamic picked me up and I left the team because they were the best in North America, bar none. We just completely dominated domestically, but internationally, it kind of felt like they were satisfied and content by being best in North America, second best, behind VeryGames type of thing. Yeah. It's no, I wanted, there's never a point where you've learned everything. You constantly learn in the game. Even when you're the best team, there's more to learn. Even when you're the best team, you still need to keep trying to maintain at the, to stay at the top. And if you're best in North America, second best in the world type of thing, and you're behind VeryGames, there should be some sort of push or drive to beat them and be better. Even if you're the best, you can still improve. And I felt like the mindset wasn't shared amongst other smaller things like personality issues. So I felt like there was some sort of animosity in the team. And I felt even if I stayed on the team, maybe the personality would have become an issue. I just wasn't happy. So I wanted to remake the team that I was on before. I got picked up by Dynamic. So I went to go and make that team again. But the players that I was going to team up with were being really dodgy at the time, so I just flick shot cut everyone from the roster. I kept TCK, and he's like, yo, okay, we could get DaZeD, we could get Frost, and then we played with Marlon at the time. Marlon doesn't play anymore, and he eventually was replaced by who we know now as Monty. So it was myself, TCK, Frost, Monty, and DaZeD was the original. We were called Cyber Rev at the time, Cyber Revolution, and that's the team that we played with. And Cyber Revolution was our sponsor. The first season that we played together, because we had used up all our roster spots and ESEA wasn't allowing us to add anyone, we had to use our manager as our fifth for the entire season because we couldn't add our fifth player to the team. So it was myself, DaZeD, Nearcry, who was the manager, Frost, and one other person. And basically, we lose 3 matches. 2 of them were to Dynamic. One of them was a forfeit loss to a team called Blight, and then we won every other game using our manager as our 5th. We had like our manager was going to pay for the flights and everything, the hotel to go to ESEA LAN. We could go there. We could get second place easily. DaZeD is like, I'm not going. I'm dodging. ESEA said at the start of the season that we could replace someone at LAN time. Like we could get a substitute. They're not allowing us to do it. I'm dodging the LAN. ESEA gives him a season-long ban. So he's banned for a season, and we have to start using like different stand-ins to fill for him. And we're having a really rough season. But eventually we get on a roster that's stable enough. We use a guy named Ryan Ramba to replace DaZeD, and we play ESEA. We go to the LAN. We win the LAN. We win ESEA LAN. We beat Dynamic in the finals. We cut Ryan Ramba to get DaZeD back. We're playing with DaZeD. Everything's going well, but we still want to keep improving. We still want to like move forwards. Everyone on the team wanted me to be the in-game leader and not DaZeD because I was calling for the ESEA season, and we felt like DaZeD's strats were a little bit too slow. So ESWC is a prospect. It's like, yo, can we do this? Okay, let's figure out the logistics. How much is it going to cost to get there? Like, we should do this because if we do this and we do well, we should be getting sponsors that can pay for us to go to events. At the time, we're paying out of pocket for a lot of things. There's very few sponsors in the scene. At the time, there's like Check6, Dynamic, Cyber Revolution. And of the 3, like none of them exist anymore, really. Like none of them became big orgs. Dynamic was run like as a hobby almost from someone who had like a real full-time commitments. Check6 was an org in the past, and it kind of was like dormant for a while. And CyberRev was a guy who also did it for a hobby. So we're like, okay, let's try to get there. We were called Torqued at the time because we didn't have any sponsorship. DaZeD kind of killed that relationship with CyberRev. So that was like, that was in the past. So we had no sponsorships. So ESWC, we're like, okay, well, we need this much money to make it. How can we get it? I ended up asking my dad to, like, I borrowed $4,000 from him so that we can go to the event. We raised $1,000 through like a donation type thing, I guess. I was making like instructional videos at the time. I was streaming a bit. So people decided to give back. We ended up raising $1,000 that way, and Check6 gave us $1,000. So we went as Check6 to ESWC, and my teammates wanted me to call. We got 3rd place. We beat Dynamic in the 3rd, 4th decider match, but we lost to a team called Seacrass in the semis. We did really well, but during this time, there was like a rift forming between, I guess, myself and DaZeD, and like the rest of the team saw it. So the rest of the team kind of was like, yeah, like we can't have both of you. Like you have to cut DaZeD. That's basically what they said. Just because like there's a personality clash, there was a philosophy clash. There was an issue with like he wanted to in-game lead, but I wanted to in-game lead, and there's like a lack of respect almost in that regard. And like there was more to it. Like there would be something like Frost would make a mistake one round, and then 3 rounds later, DaZeD is still like, I just can't believe that you would do that. Like, why do you think that was a good idea? So he'd be saying that to Frost, and I guess that like all of it added up, where we're like, okay, we need to get someone who's a more aggressive opper, who's not afraid to kind of go in and make picks, someone that's not going to like sit here and cause like this personality rift with me, since I'm the in-game leader. So we're like, okay, let's cut DaZeD and let's try to get Mo. That's basically how it went down. And we ended up getting 3rd place from ESWC, so we got the money that my dad invested back. So I was going to repay him, but then I said I asked the team, like, if I asked my dad if we could use this money to go to Copenhagen Games, are you guys down with that? Everyone said, yeah. I went to my dad, I proposed it to him. He's like, yeah. So we used the $4,000 that we won from ESWC. We paid it forwards. We went to Copenhagen Games with Mo, and we did equally as well there.
Okay. So when you had this Torqued team, which was like the main source team you were playing with, and these players that we've referenced a bunch of times, I mean, funnily enough, some of them actually basically went back to DaZeD in CSGO, where he had his Area 51 team with some of them, and then later on you got them and Torqued again. Kind of outline, like, what roles did they play in the team? What type of a team was it? I mean, presumably for the era when DaZeD isn't there, you're the in-game leader. What roles do the others play?
So I was always the in-game leader and like entry fragger guy, just kind of controlling the strats, making sure that the timings are hit. If we need to execute and hit a site, I would just go in first, fearless, and have everyone else follow me. TCK was always the guy that's like, he would see that you're in an area, he's like, I can flash for you. Like, you don't have to sit there and ask, you don't have to sit there and beg. He's just always just paying attention, ready to just support you and make sure that you're getting the kills. And if you can't get the kills, he's that rock. He's like just making sure that he's not like looking for frags, but he's not feeding at the same time. He's like the RPK of North America.
It seems like everyone who played with him actually like rates him very high. Like I know Hiko does, DaZeD, as we referenced, they all thought he was like a great teammate or something, right?
Yeah. He's the greatest teammate in the sense that he only cares about the win and he doesn't care about the spotlight at all. So he will do any, like if you have like this dirty bitch role where you don't see any action, is really boring for most people because you're just standing there most of the time, he will do it. And he enjoys doing it because he understands like the larger process. Like if I do my job here, it enables them to do their job there. We can come together as a team and win. So TCK had that role and he did it really well. Neil, aka Monty, he was always like kind of a hybrid player. He could kind of do any role you put him in, and he was kind of like TCK, but had like a slightly different approach to it. He, again, didn't really look for the spotlight, but, you know, I guess like the positions that he played kind of put him in that spotlight a little bit more. And if things weren't going so well, he would take the initiative first to kind of like step up to the plate. And he could op, he could rifle. He played a lot of positions with me, and like he'd be the second one going in right behind me type of thing. So we shared a lot of positions. And then DaZeD/Mo was one of our oppers, and then Frost was our other opper. And DaZeD and Frost were both like really passive oppers, like think Skadoodle almost, but DaZeD would make his own plays sometimes, but not as much as we'd need him to. Frost was just like a turret. He just like sat around and just held his angles really passively and just kind of Skadoodle Mo did it basically a lot of the time. And then when we brought in Mo for DaZeD, Mo was like more aggressive, and then you'd have to like tell him to not peek sometimes.
So being as these teams, if we look at them, like, okay, yeah, people like Frost, pretty good, etc. In general, a lot of the players you're listing, these aren't like the all-star players at the end of Source in NA, you know. I mean,
right.
Yeah, there's much bigger names. So does the fact that your teams did pretty well, all in all, not only domestically but internationally, did you have a very cohesive element as a team with the core?
Yeah, I think, I mean, obviously I'm going to be a little bit biased because I'm still playing with a lot of them today. So if you don't know, I'm playing with the Torqued guys again. So it's myself, TCK, Monty, we're playing with A2Z, and 4Shot hasn't been a Torqued player, but we're playing with him right now. So I'm still playing to them to this day, so it's going to be biased, but I think there was a lot of cohesion with them, and it was like we came together. Again, like maybe not the most individually talented aimers or mechanically skilled in terms of movement or anything like that, but we came together as a team because we had like the bigger picture in mind always. So we were always going to be playing for the win. That's all that matters in the end. We were approaching practice properly. We didn't just play just to play. We'd go and sit in the server and dry run things when we needed to. So we put in a lot more effort than current salaried pro players do today. But we did this back in Source when, you know, first place at the biggest tournaments were like $4,000, you know, $4,000 for the first place team. It's like, what? You get that in like 1 month of rank S.
Sure. Yeah.
So the cohesiveness definitely was there. Yeah.
So were you in CS Source better than you are in CSGO? In CSGO, are you the better player? How would you contrast yourself in the two games?
So I think in CS Source, compared to the other players in CS Source, a lot of people would rate me like top 5 players nearing the end of Source. Okay. It's like guaranteed in North America, top 20 if you include Europe as well, I guess. Just to make it fair on everyone, like most people would say AZK, Dren, myself, and DaZeD were the best players in North America in Source. When I was picked up by MTW and I was playing Source, and then we were transitioning into CSGO, I think that's when I was hitting my peak. So 2012, like throughout 2012, approaching 2013, I think that's when I was kind of hitting my peak. And then I took a year-long break where I was working in IT because MTW royally fucked me over.
Sure.
And then, so I was playing like on shitty UK teams. I was going to like Epic Lands and iSeries. I was playing with like Reason Gaming and Dignitas and stuff. Not really doing too well. So I wasn't like putting in a lot of time to practice and improve and everything. It was kind of like a side thing. I had a full-time job at the time. So I deteriorated in skill like drastically all the way until the point that iBUYPOWER came and wanted to pick me up. So I started playing with iBUYPOWER. I was still like at a low point compared to where I was at my peak in Source, compared to where I was at my peak in CSGO. I dropped off a lot. And I didn't really get that back until around the time I started playing with Torqued again, like just about the time that I got banned. And then I dipped again, and I came back up, and then I dipped, and then I think I'm coming back up now again.
Okay.
So it's not been like one thing where you just plateau and you're just up here for a while. It's kind of been like an up and down roller coaster.
Okay. So as you referenced, in the early CSGO, thanks to what you'd done at the end where you'd come on strong towards the end of CS Source, you were one of the highly touted NA players, and you got this unique opportunity where you could go to Europe and play for a European org. You played for MTW. And
yeah.
What was bizarre about this lineup was it was initially in the first versions of it, it was a very multinational squad. I mean, people are going to think I'm memeing now, but like there was UK was actually pretty good in CS Source. So there was a bunch of UK team players here. At the time, actually, there were very few Swedish Source players who were good for obvious reasons, because they all played 1.6 in the game. So I remember one of the early lineups, you actually had that guy who was recently the coach of Godson. This guy RDL was in the team. You had that German guy, Nuki, who was always around in the German Source scene. Less said about German Source scene, the better. So in this, you had Weber, obviously. Yeah. So in the early version, I remember this MTW lineup wasn't exactly set at the beginning when you first joined, right? Had you already flown over before the lineup was set? 'Cause I remember initially you were even messing around with trying out that player Face, who was a very good Swedish player in 1.6 at the end, and obviously didn't get picked up by NIP. Instead, he tried to fight for this team. So what went on with that team? Because it seemed like initially the lineup was all over the place, and you were like basically the only one who was 100% all in confirmed because you moved to Europe, right?
Yeah. So when I was first approached, it was Huds G, Nuki, Weber. They were going to pick up me, and then there was one other player. I forget who at the moment, but there was 5. It was the bottom line. I was supposed to like come in as the 5th. This is just, they were playing with Cajun B as well. So like I came in to replace Cajun B, and there was someone else, I think, or I don't know. So I think RDL was going to get picked up by me as well. And they're asking me like what I thought about him. I'm like, I know nothing about him, but like I'm the new guy on the team. I'm not going to say anything until like, I don't feel like it's my place. Sure. So they picked me up. And at the time it's like, do I want to play in North America where we only have like ESEA LAN and then one ETS LAN a year, ETS LAN first place, $3,000, or do I want to go to Europe and play like, a tournament every month type of thing, get salaried 400 euros a month. Holy shit. And they're like, yeah, and we're supposed to have a team house. It's going to be in Hamburg and it's supposed to be ready in sometime in the summer. I'm like, okay, yeah, let's do it. So I spoke to my team. I spoke to my family. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to do this. I'm going to go to Europe. I'm going to start playing CS Source there, transition to CSGO. Everything was looking good. But I'm playing online for like 2 months. Like, okay, can I get like a flight to Europe so I don't have 150 ping every time I want to play a match? So like I have to kind of chase them and beg them to get me a flight. They finally get me a flight. They fly me to London, England. I'm staying with family, like on couches. I was playing, like setting up on like a coffee table, my monitor and keyboard and everything so I could play a match. Then I'd have to like unpack everything. I was playing on a laptop the entire time. And it was just like an awful experience, just sleeping on couches, couch surfing. And that's when I finally had Richard Lewis. He basically said, hey man, if you're ever stuck, just like let me know. So I was on his couch for a few weeks and broke a chair box. To be fair, it was a shitty chair and it just like collapsed in. I wasn't fat. I was not a heavy man at the time. It just collapsed on itself, I swear. I didn't rage smash it. The table, I did rage smash, but it did not break. So I was playing there, just kind of getting really pissed off and angry that I'm just like sitting around. I'm not getting paid by MTW. I'm playing, just like working at it. And I'm asking like, okay, where's this team house? When's this going to be ready? Finally, like after 3 weeks of staying at Richard's place, they fly me to they get me a train ticket to Germany, and then like I go to Germany to Cologne, and then I go to another train station. I go up to wherever the fuck north of Hamburg. It's like a farm town, just like in the north of Germany somewhere, a complete rural area. And I'm staying with the MTW manager at the time, his wife and their 2 toddlers. I'm staying in their house in rural bumfuck nowhere, Germany. I don't speak a word of German at the time. And even if I did, to go out, there's like no fast food, there's no convenience stores, there's nothing.
Okay.
We're in a farm town. So I'm staying inside the entire time, just playing and grinding CS. And that's when I was hitting my peak again. But at the time, like, Hadji, like I got picked up, and Hadji's like, he doesn't want to play with Weber. There's like inter team turmoil there. So they cut Weber, and then we're trying to like always find a new fifth. So, Hadji's like putting out all of these big names. And he's like, what about Face? What about Mixaki? What about this guy? What about that guy? And we're trying out all these players, and they all fucking suck. They're all coming from 1.6. And the only reason why they are playing CSGO at the time is for the paycheck. Yeah. They're not putting in any time. They're asking for like double my salary, and I'm playing like 12 hours a day. They're asking for like double my salary. They're not putting any time in. They're just scrimming. They're not learning anything. And they're getting surprised by rushes all the time. They're not learning like CSGO mechanics are completely different from the 1.6 ones. And at the time, like you do like this double bunny hop thing with an op. I don't know how to explain it, but if you remember like early CSGO, if you're about to peek out and then you crouch and then you uncrouch or something, like it like hops you or something like that. It was something weird. And I'm trying to like show this. I'm doing it with Mixaki for like an hour one time. He's not even on the team. And I'm trying to show him how to do this. And then like with Face, like he just always has a nade out and he's just getting bum rushed. And I'm saying like, we can't just go and get these guys that have big 1.6 names because they don't care. They're not going to put any time in, and they're not going to get better. Like we should go after people that, have potential to get better, that are good now, but have potential to get better because they don't have like massive egos and want to play because they enjoy playing and not because of the paycheck. So we were like thinking about getting other players, like we're thinking about reaching out to players like SMF and Dupree and some other Danish players and some other UK players. But then by that time, MTW is like, by the way, we're out of money. We haven't told you anything for a really long time, but we're closing the organization down. And the team house thing, that was like a joint operation with the ESC guys. That wasn't an MTW thing. It was between myself, like the owner of MTW, and the owner of ESC to kind of do their own thing. And that's where I was staying for the last 2 months. So I stayed at my manager's house for 1 month, and then I stayed at this ESC boot camp facility for 2 months before MTW finally closes down. And then I'm just like left alone. I'm like, okay. So I'm here in Germany. I have no team. You haven't paid me in 7 months. I'm kind of fucked. We haven't been able to go to any tournaments because our roster's not been stable, because you haven't been able to pay anyone. You haven't been able to tell us like if we're going to get a team house, if you're going to pay us, if you can send us to tournaments. You said you had no money to send us to tournaments until the next year, and now it's the next year and you're shutting down. This is kind of fucked up. So I got a train ticket to London, and then I got a job full time, and I stopped playing CS for a year.
You said there that like after the MTW thing, like you played like a LAN with Dignitas, you went to some of the UK LANs. Was your motivation, like if in your mind, if you could think like if these problems go away, were you still ready to like stay all in on CS and try and be a pro and all this? Because for people who don't know the context, it's like early CSGO, part of the reason also why people at 1.6 players were so bad is because everyone was like just depressed at how small the scene was early on as well. So a lot of people wouldn't like commit to it. They were sort of like 1 foot in, 1 foot out. Let's see where this goes,
Yeah.
And you can see the couple of teams that were really good. They were the ones at the top, They're the ones that really dedicate themselves. So this must, in terms of motivation, have been the worst period. If you're just stuck in the UK, there's not even any options there. There's no real prospects at this point in time. What was it like? Like, did you still have motivation to want to play? Did you think I'm probably just going to have to retire and this is done with CS?
At the start, I was trying to like balance both, working full time and playing CS. But then after a few months, especially like after I quit Dignitas, I'm just like I don't have the motivation to do this anymore. Like it's just too much stress, and it's too like it's screwing up my personal life now as well. And the reason why I got into competitive CS in the first place was it was like a mental escape. It was something that I truly enjoyed. It was something that I had fun with, and I didn't really enjoy anything else in life. So it was like my escape. It was the thing that I really looked forward to. And then it started becoming something that stressed me out. And I had a good thing going. I was working full time. I had a good routine. I had friends. it was like everything was going well. I didn't want to kind of sabotage that. So I put CS on the sideline, the back burner for a little bit as I did lose motivation. And then I got the motivation back when I started doing the observer work at the EMS events, EMS ones, the ESL events that, you know, the last one I did before I got picked up by iBUYPOWER was the EMS1 Katowice, which was the second major ever. And when I saw that crowd and everything, and I saw how big the scene was getting, that's when I'm like, fuck, dude, like, I want to play again. I don't want to sit here in IT doing this, you know, sometimes menial tasks. Sometimes it's enjoyable. Like the whole, like, I guess the managerial part of it where you're sitting there doing like paperwork and shit, that wasn't something I enjoyed. I enjoyed fixing things. I enjoyed playing CS more. And when I saw that CS was, you know, bigger again and that I had an opportunity to get back into it, I'm like, hell yeah, I'm like as motivated as I can be right now.
So when you had these tournaments, like you say, the EMS ones where you were going and you were getting to be the observer, and at the time, obviously, production was a lot smaller. It would just literally be you and a PC, presumably, and then there's just a producer in your ear, right? It's not like two people handing off and all that sort of jazz that they can sometimes get away with now. A lot of people might remember, at least people who were around back then, you once made a video where you kind of outlined your philosophy of how you do observing in CSGO. And a lot of the basic principles you put down at the time are things that basically people have tried to, you can see they've tried to integrate it since, like how you show someone coming out of a smoke and then when you turn the x-ray on and off, all that sort of thing. And then whether you, I mean, a famous one is you always have the one person if they're in 1v2 instead of showing one of the other ones. I mean, famously that idiot ESL1 Cologne fucked it up when Simple did that like 1v2 no scope and didn't get any of the kills. But okay, we all understand why these principles exist now, right? How much of that did you actually have to come up with yourself? Because I remember in 1.6 etc, we actually used to literally not have an observer. It used to just be that auto director function in digital TV used to just randomly move around. And so all the casters would do it, you know, they could take control themselves. So actually the concept of an observer didn't really exist for most esports people until CSGO. And obviously people were such noobs in the early days, they didn't really complain about observing back then because you didn't really know what good observing was. So was it actually a challenge to try and figure out like what are the guidelines of doing this? How am I going to do this well?
It was kind of a challenge, and I think that's why I enjoyed tackling it so much. But everyone who played 1.6 or CSORs they didn't have streams where you could just like pop on a stream, kick back and relax. You'd have to actually manually click through if you wanted to spectate a game. You'd sit in the the Source TV or the HLTV or something, and you would just actually like manually click through. So I kind of had like an understanding of, oh, I click through. But then I kind of understood it to be more than just like, you're not there just catching frags, you're there kind of painting a full story. So if you're able to get all the frags while like painting the story of like, this is the progression of the round. Oh, this guy's got an op. So like, I'll show this at the start of the round that this guy's got an op. And then I'll show like the overhead. And then, you know, people are going to these spots. And then I'll go to the opera because he's going to go for a pick. And then I know like there's going to be side action. Like I would do all those things and I would try to like make it a mini game almost. So it's not me at work directing the in-game camera. It's me every round is a mini game in itself where I can win or I can lose. If I win, I'm telling the story, I'm showing all the action and everything's looking really good to the viewer. And if I fuck it up, it's like I'm not paying attention, I'm distracted, I'm missing crucial kills here. And it's not that I just like picked the wrong player. It's like I'm not focusing, and it's like there's a kill that happens and I see on the radar that was so obvious, I should have anticipated it, but I was focused on this other guy instead for whatever reason. And it's just like, fuck, I fucked up. But it's okay because I'm going to learn from this. And the next time I'm going to like be able to kind of balance it out. You know, even if I show like these people here, they're about to get an engagement, show them for 2 seconds, go to this other action here, other action happens, but then these guys have the fight and someone dies. You know what happened in that time. It's like I showed you what led up to it. And then I have to show you this other thing, which I thought was more important. But there's a kill that happened. You know what happened with the kill. You know like where they were on the map. So it's not like the kill just happened. You're like, wait, what just happened? You knew what was happening. So I understood that, and it was kind of like a game to be able to score all those in itself. And I don't know if like it's something I could teach. It's just something that just came to me, and it just felt natural. I don't know. There's no like, I didn't sit down and think like, all right, what can I do to make my observing better? It's just like, I just learned from trial and error almost.
Even though obviously anyone who had the potential to play or do on-camera work, I've noticed chooses that over being an observer. Like, people forget Yanko was an observer as well. The second he could get out of that gig, he's gone, and you've never seen him observe a fucking game since. So when you were doing this, it makes sense that you were doing it during the period where you didn't have a team and you didn't know if you were going to be on a pro team again. Later on, obviously, you came back to being a pro. In a world where you didn't get banned, was going back to observing ever an option? Like, if you'd have known what you know now about how big the scene would get, and like now actually you can get paid a decent amount for doing it and you're part of a production team, was it ever something you considered for later on in your career as well?
I mean, I did it at MLG X Games Aspen, and that's when I was still playing with the Torqued guys. So, you know, if I wasn't invited to a tournament or my team didn't qualify for a tournament, definitely it could be something that I would be open to doing. Obviously, at the time, the pay wasn't that good. I remember, like, I don't know if we should talk about numbers of like what we were getting paid as like a on-screen and talent, as well as like what we were getting paid for observer, but the pay wasn't that great. I mean, you know, I think the major, the EMS1 Katowice, I think it was like 400 euros for the whole weekend, which, you know, at the time was like really good.
Sure.
So it's like, all right, let's do it. But I remember at X Games Aspen, I got paid half as much as all the on-screen talent did, but I was there literally every single game. Yeah. I was the only observer, and I was present for every match, which means I had to miss meals. And I had to be like fully attentive the entire day. And then you have like other casters, you know, that are just like on their phone or whatever. You switch off every series or every match or whatever. You just like switch off and you have another pair go up. You know, sometimes there's like the desk analysts that you're there, you know, in between games for like 5 minutes, 10 minutes. And that's like the extent of your work, and you're getting paid twice as much as me. So I felt like there was some sort of discrepancy there. I think if the pay kind of made sense and leveled out a little bit, I could definitely see myself wanting to do it more. And it's definitely something that I'd still be open to doing. I think it's just like if someone comes to me with an offer, hey, you can be on-screen talent, or you can be like an analyst or something, or you could be the observer for half the pay and twice the work, I'd be like, yeah, I'll take the former if possible.
Okay. So when we got to the point where you got picked up by iBUYPOWER, the context for people is like the iBUYPOWER team. I won't go to the whole history of like how it was like some of the dynamic players merged with some of the cursed players and then eventually got DaZeD and then became a team. Like, that's a quick version. But basically, when they were iBUYPOWER, you know, we'd had 2 majors, as you referenced. And at the first major, they came in online form. They'd been great. Apparently, at this boot camp, they'd torn everyone up. They were all bragging about how, like, you know, we wrecked all these European teams and stuff. And then famously, at the major, they didn't even have that killer group, but they just went out in the group stage. Then Katowice came around, and same story out in the group stage. This time, they had at least some good teams in their group. I'll admit that.
Would it be at least VP and Fnatic?
Well, it wasn't bad.
No,
not VP. It wasn't Virtus Pro.
We had Virtus Pro.
No, that's later when you were in the team.
Sorry, okay.
They can't have done, yeah.
Oh, sorry, you're right, sorry.
Yeah, you got that mixed up.
Yeah.
They did have some good teams, though.
I fucked up. Yeah.
So
that's where they got the term iBUY playing for tickets, yeah.
They blew another LAN, though, another big major. So at this point in time, it's understandable why they would make changes. And the 2 changes they made was they managed to somehow, to this day, no one's ever really figured it out. Apparently, DaZeD doesn't even know himself. Somehow just lure Swag away from Complexity, as they were at the time, come over to iBUYPOWER. And then they added you as well. And the players they were replacing was Anger and Adren. And obviously those are 2 dynamic players. They're players you've played with in the past in those teams. But they're 2 of the players where, at least I'll just say purely as an outsider. As an outsider, I would have picked those 2 as the 2 that looked like they were having the biggest problems at the majors. You know, like Anger was a player where his aim was just so good online that, like, it was unacceptable that he just couldn't do it at the LANs for me, you know. And I remember when he was in those cursed teams, he was pretty bad in those ones as well at the LANs. So I could figure why that he got caught. And then the Adren one, that's something I wanted to ask you about. Okay, so you very briefly played with him and obviously were like a rival in-game leader of his in Source. What do you think? What was the difference between Adren in CSGO and in Source? Because in Source, everyone speaks very complimentary of him and says he's done a great job and he's a good leader. So what were his issues, do you think, in iBUYPOWER in CSGO?
I think that it's not just Adren, but there were a lot of players that came over to CSGO not because they liked the switch or wanted to switch, just because like they could get money from it. And I don't think the motivation was fully there for him, whether it be like the players that he was playing with, like he didn't really enjoy the team or he didn't enjoy the game. I think there was some sort of motivational issue where he just couldn't give it his all. and as a result didn't try to give it his all. I think that was like the major thing that kind of held him back. But there were also other issues, like maybe his comms weren't great. I know like Anger, we used to like in Source when we played against him, he would always just get nervous in pressure situations and then just shit the bed and just miss all his shots. Like we used to say, okay, like let's just go and overwhelm him and he'll just die. So with regards to those two and Adrenaline specific, I think like it was just like a motivation issue, to be honest.
Okay, so when they made this team, right, obviously them getting swag, that's a move that makes a lot of sense.
Right.
What was the logic behind how they brought you in? Because as you've said in the past, you'd obviously had played briefly with DaZeD, but you'd had some conflicts with him as well. And also, coming into the team, he is the in-game leader. Now, admittedly, that's something, there's definitely some leeway for you to talk about, because I know at the time, this is something that was at least a rumor in the scene. So, good old NA scene, by the way, every rumor gets out there. So I remember when they famously won that first ESEA LAN over VeryGames, it was Titan at the time.
Titan,
just changed to the first one before you guys got there. This was the one where, even though DaZeD was the in-game leader, people claimed, like, I don't know if they were just hating on him. They were like, "Oh, Dren secretly called some of that final," some shit like that, And so it was always a question of how much was DaZeD the in-game leader. So when you were joining the team, was it actually like explicitly said, like, you'll be like a secondary caller, or you'll take turns on certain parts of the map now? Because there seems that there's a lot of confusion to this day with the stories people tell of who did what as the in-game leading. So what was it like when you were joining the team? What was the premise?
When they got me, they wanted me initially to be the in-game leader. So I was calling for like the first month. We had like decent, like we were winning a lot of things. I think we had like a show match against Na'Vi online. We beat them there. And I felt like everything was going all right, but then they said, until you get more used to us and our rules and everything, like I'll take over calling. So DaZeD was calling for a bit, and then by the time we were going to like Siva LAN type of thing, I was kind of putting a lot more input into the team, and like I was this secondary caller almost. And anytime like DaZeD was having issues, or anytime like he didn't have an idea, I'd just be there ready with an idea, and I'd take control, especially a lot of the time during mid rounds. And then I guess heading into where we went to ESL 1 Cologne and Gfinity, it was after Gfinity, before ESL 1 Cologne, we were having like a team discussion, and then we wanted to switch back to me being the in-game leader. And then when we got to the major, when we were discussing like what maps to veto, DaZeD wanted to like do a coin flip on Cobblestone against Fnatic. So we played them on Cobblestone, but we didn't have any practice on it. I wasn't comfortable with the map, and I didn't want to do that play. That was his decision to play them on that map, because he said it would be too hard to beat them on other maps, especially like a Mirage. Like we'd lose to them 100% on Mirage, but on Cobble we have like a 50% chance. I'm like, that doesn't make sense. But but that's how we did the veto. So we got them on Cobble, and we lost to them on this. And then we played that team. We beat them on Cobble. Again, you have that 33% chance it's going to, you do ban. There's 3 maps left, and it's a random pick. So we got Cobble twice in a row. We play against VP on Cash, but we hadn't played Cash at all in the boot camp, because we were so good on Cash previously, and we played VP on Cash at ESEA LAN and beat them like 16-6 or something. So like, we didn't play Cash at all during the boot camp. We had a lot of wasted time at the boot camp. Like that's something that pissed me off a lot, because we were scheduling. Before we went to the boot camp, I said, look, we can either play 3 days and play it really hard, or we play all the days, but we go not as hard, because we're going to burn ourselves out and we're going to waste a lot of time. And they started booking scrims, like 8 scrims, like 8 hours of scrims every day. Like, we didn't have time to go over demos. We didn't have time to do this. We didn't have time to do that. And it was just so bad. So at this like second last day of our boot camp, like we're like, yeah, like we're not allocating our time properly, and we want to switch in-game leaders to me. So I was supposed to be the in-game leader, but we hadn't played VP on Cash since ESEA LAN. Or sorry, the last time we played VP on Cash was at ESEA LAN. We beat them. It was DaZeD calling, and we hadn't played Cash at the boot camp with me calling yet. So it just made sense for DaZeD to call. And then so I didn't actually have a chance to call at that event, and then I don't remember what happened after that. I forget what the order of events was. Was FACEIT LAN after that?
Yes, it was a few months after.
So DaZeD was calling for that again.
Okay.
But I had quit the team, but I was like playing for the rest of the year with them.
Yes.
So like I told Daze, I told the manager at first, but then like the rest of them, I remember like I was talking to Assembler, for example, at the after party at FACEIT LAN, that like, yeah, he's like, man, are you sure you really want to quit? Like you guys did so well just now. I'm like, yeah, dude, like this, you know, issues here, and here. I don't think, you know, we'll be good, but we'll never be the best consistently and remain up there. And I don't think I'd be happy. Like the thing I care about the most when I play with the CS team is how happy am I going to be? So even if we're winning everything for like a period of time, if I'm not happy, then I'm not going to be able to perform as well as I could. And that's, you know, part of the reason why I wasn't as good as I was in Source or peak CSGO when I was on iBUYPOWER, is because, you know, like I was happy at the start, but then like I wasn't happy. But then when I quit the team, and, you know, this is before FACEIT LAN and everything, that's when I started playing like my best. Like I'm just like, yeah, like this is it.
So prior to FACEIT, obviously the thing about iBUYPOWER was you had almost like, as a team, it had almost like the reverse reputation to Cloud9, whereas Cloud9's weird rep was domestically they didn't do that much. In fact, they lost to you almost every time it mattered. But then they would be the ones who'd go to the European LAN, including the majors, obviously, and do pretty well. They'd make like top 8 and they'd have upsets. Okay,
I have to challenge you on this, because you've said this plenty of times, countless amounts of times. The only event that Cloud9/Complexity ever did better than us at, domestically or internationally, was ESL1 Cologne, where they made it past the group stage and we lost to VP Fnatic in the group stage. Every other event, so ESWC, Gfinity, FACEIT, every domestic event, we beat them, especially in head-to-head. So at like the SoCal Revival, at the ESCA LAN, at wherever we played them against, we beat them. And then every other international event, we had better international standings, except for that one event, which is the major.
Well, I mean, I'm talking more generally about the history of the two teams going back, like before.
Okay, so you're talking like you're including before me and after me.
Yeah, I'm just saying for the rep, because the difference is the Cloud9 team was fairly similar for the whole period. They had the same core. So the question I had basically was, how come every time you faced them, you pretty much did beat them in every like straight up head-to-head match? Why were they so beatable for you if they were somehow doing well internationally?
So DaZeD was really good at reading, especially on CT side. He would be able to read like what the enemy was about to do. But I think he learned that the most by playing against them and I guess watching them play. And I don't think he spent enough time kind of learning and understanding the European teams. So I forget which event we were at. It might have been ESWC. We were playing Na'Vi, and we ended up playing them on Overpass and some other map. And we lost like 16-13, 16-13. And I remember the night before when we knew the matchups, and I saw like, okay, we're playing Na'Vi. I went through like the HLTV stats page and I looked at like what maps they play the most and what are the records on the maps. I'm like, okay, they have a good record on this map and they play it a lot. So we're probably going to play them on Overpass. So I downloaded an Overpass demo, I downloaded another demo, and I watched how they played. And I was the only one who did this, and I made notes and everything. And we went into the vetoes and we got the maps. I'm like, okay, it's okay. They picked Overpass, or we got it on Overpass. It's okay because I know how they play it. I know what they do and I know what we need to do. But we hadn't played a lot of Overpass. We hadn't practiced it. I was playing B and I had no idea what the fuck I was supposed to do. Like I was completely lost, like 100% lost, no doubt about it, because I didn't have any playtime on it. But I saw what they did, and they would be aggressive on A at the start of the rounds and they would play stack towards B. And until we pushed them back from A, they would be stacked B. And I would tell DaZeD this, and he's like, all right, but this round, let's do this B thing. I'm like, dude, we have to push them back from A because Guardians just pushed up with his op at A. We're doing this other thing. We need to push them back. Otherwise, they're going to be stacked B and we're going to run into a trap. He's like, okay, all right. But this round, let's do this. But this round, let's do this. And it's like the whole time. And like that shit triggered me. Like that, I think that type of thing is what was the biggest internal team issue that I had with DaZeD and DaZeD with me, is that like the way I'm an in-game leader is I have these ideas and I have this structure and I have this philosophy and outlook. But if I'm ever stuck, I will always reach out to my teammates for ideas. And like if they see something that we can exploit, if they have an idea, if they have this, like I'll always go. And even if we're winning and like I'm calling everything good, I'll be like, hey, what are they doing at this spot every round? Hey, what are they doing at that spot? Like, is there something that we can do? But DaZeD never did that. Like he was always just like in his own head and tunnel visioned a lot because of it. Yeah. So he would have like this idea and he would kind of like ram it into a wall and no one was able to kind of bring him away from it. When he was playing with like myself and TCK and Monty, like, you know, all of us could be like, DaZeD, like we can do this other thing or we shouldn't do that. But when you're playing with AZK and Swag and Skadoodle, none of them would say like anything at all. Like they'd be completely quiet. Yeah. So no one was there to be like, yo, Daze, dude, you gotta fucking stop tunnel visioning on this. And we're giving you other ideas. We're telling you what's happening here. And we're saying like, this isn't working. We can try this other thing. And like, that was like his major fallback, I think.
So, okay, to pick up on that point, that is something, especially from the outside, that seemed pretty obvious, which is that if the reason why there's going to be clash between Steel and DaZeD is because, as you just referenced, like Skadoodle obviously was the most ridiculous example where it seemed like he just never talked. but AZK is a pretty quiet guy, and then Swag is just, I mean, even Swag's style of play just kind of does his own thing, you know, and so I can almost understand that one. But if three of the members of the team never talk, and then two of you have very strong opinions, it's just going to be like, right, clear the deck. This 1v1's going to go on all the time. So I noticed even within the team, when at times it was working, it felt like both of you actually were very aware of this. Because I remember DaZeD would always be talking about to AZK, like, oh, you've got to talk more, like, give me more info, you know. I know I've actually seen you yourself just sit next to Skadoodle and be like, right, what are we going to do this round? Like, where are you going to go? Just to try and get him to say something, you know?
Yeah.
Why was it so tough to just draw anything out of these guys? Usually, it's funny, most NA players I've seen in the history of Counter-Strike never shut the fuck up talking, you know. It's all like, beep, beep, beep. It really is all that, you know. Why are these guys just, it was like getting blood out of a stone, getting them to talk.
Yeah, I think it does come from like who kind of were the stars on the team and how comfortable everyone was. So like AZK, when he was playing with Dynamic, he was the primary operator. He was just running around doing whatever the fuck he wanted, going aggressive, getting picks, and just dominating. But he had the people to kind of keep him in line who wouldn't be afraid to just be like, you know, this is like, we could do this or you shouldn't do that, like play passive. He had those kind of like TTKs on his team. Legend, his name was Legend, was the player on Dynamic at the time that did that, and he didn't play in CSGO. I think without someone kind of bringing AZK back down to earth, I think he got quieted. I think he was just too quiet because DaZeD like overshadowed him and like out alphaed him almost in a way. So I think he just like became quiet. Swag was just never confrontational and kind of like doing sneaky shit like he is doing now. And then Skadoodle was one of those guys that just wanted to sit around and just fucking take op shots. He was never going to go and make a play. So if he needed to make a play, we would need to tell him like, Scott, go do this and get a pick. And even if we told him to do it, he would just like go to a certain spot and just post up. He wouldn't like peek all the way out, get the kill and fall back. He would just like, we'd be like, okay, push off cat and get a kill. He would go to cat and just sit on cat with an off. It's like, no, you have to push off and get the kill, open up the round, and then, you know, it makes it so much easier. It alleviates so much pressure on the rest of us. And I don't know. It's just like, I don't know why they were so quiet. I don't know if it's like an intimidation factor. They're afraid to talk back. I honestly don't know why. I think it's just their personality, because we see it even today when they're on teams that aren't as like intimidating. You still see they act the same way. So it's got to be something that's part of their personality that stems from way before CS. It was even a part of their lives.
So the weird part about Skadoodle, as you kind of referenced there, is that this is a guy where when he had it rolling, you'd be like, well, this guy's one of the best AWPers in the world. But bizarrely, it's like he shut himself down. He was the guy who just sometimes would just do nothing or just do the same thing over and over again. And both of those are obviously bad options. So it's very rare I've ever seen like people with star talent, like at skill level, who are like that. Usually people who have a lot of skill, it's the other way around. They want to have all the say over what they do, and they're too aggressive. And, you know, normally the in-game leader's having to rein them in a bit. As a person, this is something that no one ever addresses. Did you get to know him at all as a person? Was he difficult to open up in that sense? Do you have a sense as to why he has this very kind of weird approach to the game?
He was very reserved and secretive of his like personal life. It was very hard to get him to open up. I remember there was like one time we were in Montreal it was an East of DC qualifier, I believe, and we were out drinking, and I'm like, hey, or I don't know, maybe it was a different event. It doesn't matter though. I'm like, hey man, you're finally out of your shell. Cause like he was like smiling, he was laughing, he was like dancing and shit. I'm like, hey man, you finally came out of your shell, dude. And it's like, dude, you know nothing about me, or something like that. I'm just like, all right, okay. Dude, like fuck, I'm sorry. Like I didn't mean to get personal like that. Holy shit. So I think that he's just really reserved and only opens himself up when he's trusting of someone. And I think that was like the biggest thing. I don't think this is like another issue that I said was a problem with iBUYPOWER, and I think that's why they're going to have issues to this day when they form their new team. None of us were friends. Like, none of us were like, yo, let's go and hang out together, friends. It's like, oh, we're on a CS team, so let's play a PUG together, you know?
Yeah. So, okay, along those lines, though, let me ask you this then. You yourself have been known to get into drama, to get into confrontation, to be...
I have no idea what you're talking about.
No, so here's what I want to know, though, is almost everyone I know who actually knows you, who's been a teammate of yours, or who's just known you more than, like, first impression, initial thing, why do you think the first impression always... It's so extreme, right? It's always like, it's always somehow you getting into a battle with someone. It happened with me, right? You just flamed me a few times out of nowhere early on in the early days of CSGO. Why is that like your initial sort of mode of attack before you get to know someone?
I mean, sometimes I have a filter, but sometimes I don't. Like I'm confrontational, you know, maybe not like the super most confrontational person ever, but when you compare it like relative to the rest of the CS scene or esports scene in general, I'm largely confrontational. I'm not afraid to speak my mind, and even if it's a controversial issue. And a lot of people don't really like that confrontational thing. They like, you know, everything's like daisies, flowers, butterflies, stuff like that, happy, happy, happy stuff. And it's just like, if I see something that I don't like, or if I see something that is, you know, I think can be improved upon, you know, is good, but can use improvement still, it's something that, I don't know, maybe I am overly critical, and, you know, maybe that's a flaw of my character, but that's just something that I need to do, or you know, I'm a perfectionist almost. So if I see something in myself, I'm going to work on it. And I want my teammates to tell me in game, you know, if I'm doing something wrong or something, tell me, give me that criticism. Okay. And what I guess triggers me the most is when people aren't able to just be like, okay, this is the criticism, I'm going to take the criticism, that's it. You know, if someone's getting angry at me because I'm doing the same thing over and over 5 times in a row, and they told me 5 different times, starting from calm and getting, you know, progressively angry, and I'm still fucking it up. Like, I understand they're getting angry. I'm not going to like shut down emotionally or mentally because they're getting angry and yelling at me. I'm going to take this criticism. I'm going to learn from it. I spent years in CS Source getting yelled at. Like, most famously, I played with like Remix and Schaefer and stuff like that. And they were just yelling at me anytime I made a mistake. And it kind of gave me a sort of mental fortitude. So I guess part of that experience is, I guess I started getting angry or frustrated at other people. And like, if I saw, for the example, when I was making those comments to you, you were doing like a cast with someone and you kept interrupting. I'm just like, dude, like, you make good points, but you need to stop talking when this other guy's like talking in the middle of a round. And it's like, it was something that annoyed me, and probably my presentation of it wasn't the nicest, but that's not something that was ever kind of in my mind. And I mean, fuck, dude, I'm socially awkward as fuck. I don't know what to say in a lot of situations. Yeah. I'm probably like borderline Asperger's. I don't know. I just don't know what to say sometimes. So I just say it like really, I'm just really abrasive kind of.
When you're actually in your teams though, if you're the in-game leader of a team, are you a bit softer with some teammates? Here's the thing, from the outside, no one can ever know what you say on comms. So they're going to think you're like, they're going to think whatever you know, if you rage at someone in like Rank S, they're going to think that's what you're like with your teammates.
Yeah.
Especially because obviously that's the rep that DaZeD had, because DaZeD had almost the opposite problem. If you met him in person, he seemed, well, except for that story when he met you, he seemed fine when you met him in person. But then I've heard the way he talked in game, he was pretty hard to deal with sometimes. So what were you actually like around your teammates though?
So I'd like to think that most of my teammates thought that I was really manageable. I know exactly what you mean. Like, when I started playing Overwatch, for example, and I stopped playing with Splice, a lot of teams were afraid to give me a tryout because I had that reputation of just like raging at everyone, because that's what I did in streams. Yeah. But all my teams, like, I wouldn't rage at people. I would rage at how we lose. So it's not that we lose, it's how we lost. If we're losing to people that are on eco, and I just said like, okay, they're going to be in eco, they're going to do this, like play back, and we're going to do this, and like people didn't listen and we lost because of that, then I would get mad. But I was always really selective with the players that I played with. So anytime I'm in a team, I respect the people I'm playing with, and I trust them to make the right decisions and the right plays. And if they fuck up, then I know that they know why they fucked up, and how to fix that mistake. So when I play Rank S or any pugs and I'm playing with like the same people over and over again that have been playing longer than I have and haven't, been able to consistently stay on like a pro league team, and they have no results, they haven't won a LAN ever type of thing, and they're making the same like amateur mistakes that I see like month in, month out, then I'm going to lose my shit at them. I'm going to rage because it's just so stupid at this point that I'm losing Rank S games or whatever other game because people don't know basic CS and can't just like, it should be a habit. It should be autopilot. It should be a subconscious reaction or decision that they make to make the right play. It shouldn't be something that they have to sit there thinking about. Like, I could either play for fun or I could make the right play. Like, it shouldn't be like a thing. Yeah. So with my teams, it was always like, I felt pretty grounded because I would never have to worry about those situations. So with regards to being soft on some people, I know some people weren't as mentally tough as others, and I would go a little bit softer on them. I know that other people were mentally tougher, and I'd have to do it to get through to them. You're playing with someone like Mo, you have to yell at them, otherwise they're gonna, it's like a bear. You don't act like a small dude. You have to pretend like you're this big thing to get through to them. But other players, if you're playing with Swag or Skadoodle, if you kind of yell at them, they're going to shut down. Maybe Swag, maybe not so much. Skadoodle, though, definitely. I remember watching him, like, even after he knows he fucks up, like he'll miss a shot or he'll make the wrong play or he'll lose a clutch. You'll see him. He's just like this. And then he's just like cracking his knuckles and he's just looking down. He's looking sad and everything. He just gets in his own mind. So I know, like, if I yell at him, we're fucked. So I tried not to. Having said that, Days was a different story to Ska. But sure. Yeah, I feel like I wasn't, like, I'm definitely not. I can say with extreme confidence, I am definitely not the same on stream as I am with my teams.
Sure. So when we reference,
what have you heard? What have you heard? Because you said you talked to other people that were teammates of mine.
Oh, people who are teammates of yours have all been fairly complimentary. I mean, obviously we exclude DaZeD in there because natural bias between the two of you. So yeah, the rest of them, it was all fine, mate. They're all perfectly complimentary. Okay, so at that FACEIT LAN where you made it to the finals, you beat LDLC, obviously later Envious, and played against Fnatic, as you referenced, it was already agreed before this and known by some people in the scene that you were going to leave the team wasn't going to continue with that lineup. How does a team have its best result, theoretically, under those circumstances?
No pressure. I think a large part of it is, and I don't want to like toot my own horn, it's like I played with no pressure. I was still in like bitch roles, but I kind of like played just like my own game. I wasn't as like, if DaZeD is calling a strat, instead of me doing like exactly what he wants, I kind of like took a little bit of my own freedom. Like, I'm not going to follow this to a T. I'm going to go and make my own plays and everything. I felt like a load was lifted off my shoulder. So I was like a little bit more motivated. I was happier. I'm like, okay, like I know like there's a light at the end of the tunnel, another month or two like this, and I can go and I can play with the Torqued guys. Like I'm working on these plans again so that we can get the team back together. And, after all these events, after the ESE LAN in December, like I can go and play with my old friends again. I'm going to be happy again. So I think that was a load off my shoulder, which allowed me to be a lot more vocal and I guess like instrumental at like when we were playing. Like I was a lot more vocal with ideas, strats, mid rounding, but I was also taking a lot more freedoms with my play style as an individual. And I think that helped a lot. I always said that there was a massive issue with the roles on the team. And I think that if you replaced me with someone else that was an actual support player instead of someone that like I need to a certain extent the spotlight. Like that's the kind of player I am. Okay. So, I still rate really highly team play and the overall win, but I still need that kind of spotlight thing. That's just who I am. It's my personality. So I think if they had someone like TCK instead of me, and they had him at the start instead of getting me at the start, I think they might have had, maybe more success. I don't know. Maybe they might have instead of having me there at the start. It wasn't until I kind of like had that metaphorical load lifted off my shoulders that I was able to break out and start performing well, and then having the team perform well as a result of it. Because I kind of turned into the hype guy too, you know, going and doing the burning on stage and kind of like yelling and hyping us up. And, you know, I don't feel like I am that type of person. I feel like I did that out of necessity. And I think you should never get someone to do something out of necessity, because like they can do a good job, but they can't, you know, jack of all trades, master of none type of thing. Get someone that can do that role. Get someone else that can do that role. And yeah, that's just my take on it, or my philosophy.
So after iBUYPOWER, at the time, people have to understand the context, was that in NA, there was basically iBUYPOWER and Cloud9, and if you weren't on one of those two teams, people thought of you as like a semi-pro player, or they thought, oh, they'll never be relevant, because there wasn't as many big sponsors. In fact, it was only a few months later, but it was 2015 when all the CLGs and the League of Legends teams came in, and you could have a full scene, you know? So once you were no longer on iBUYPOWER and you went and made Torqued, people who are only CSGO fans and only like on an international level would think naively, oh, right, he's either just playing for fun to kind of like pass the time now, or he's playing on a lower level, because they don't know a lot of those teammates were either good early in CSGO or were your old teammates from Source.
Yeah.
Was this, I've heard you imply something along these lines, when you made Torqued again, the goal was you were going to be all in on that team, right? And you were going to have this brand and you were going to build it and you were going to try and keep the core of the team. And if you make it back to the top, it was going to be with that team, right?
Yeah, I was definitely all in with that, and I was confident that we could do it.
Now, obviously, there wasn't that long. It was only a month or two before the ban came in early 2015. How much work did you actually get done with Torqued, and what would you... Did it look like it had the potential towards the end to do something more?
I mean, I was doing the behind the scenes stuff as well as the front end stuff. So I was, you know, I was looking for investors. I was like, I incorporated the company like Torqued Gaming Inc. I was again the website and the hosting, and I was building the website. I was dealing with the designers for the logo and everything. I was dealing with all that stuff out of game. So it really took I was giving like everything I had to make Torqued work. And then also in game, like I was playing like the best CS I was playing ever. I was like constantly at the top of the scoreboard, like 30 bombing and leading the team to victory and in-game leading. And I had like the full support of my teammates to do everything. We were streaming our matches. We were getting combined like 30,000 viewers on our like personal streams. So like between myself and Mo. So like crazy hype. We were getting results as well. So, you know, with just like a couple of weeks of practice, we were taking down like the iBUYPOWER. We lost to them like 2-1. They beat us. The final map was Cobble, of all fucking things, in the qualifier for one of the tournaments. I forget which one. Was it the MLG one? Yeah. So, yeah. And CLG won the other qualifier, and they won CLG won the first qualifier. So like we're the third best team, arguably. Sure. In the region at the time, and that was basically TCK hadn't played competitively since like Quantic days. Monty hadn't played competitively in like a year. Deborn hadn't been playing competitively at all. He's just been playing pugs. Mo hadn't been playing competitively since like, I don't know, early CSGO. So I was taking a bunch of people that were kind of like on a hiatus, and we're coming back into the scene and just, you know, outplacing and beating all the other teams that, you know, had been playing consistently over the last like, you know, 2 years before it, and been playing at LAN tournaments and had international results. So I think we were in a pretty good spot considering we were only like, you know, a month of practice, maybe if that. And I think there was a lot of potential for us to go further. And I think like now I have that chance to do that again for ESL events. So we'll see.
So obviously in Source, Mo was a very good player, but we're talking about actually even further before your career began. It was like the CGS days, which was mainly his prime, you know, when he was at the top. It's very tough to talk about him now because people will only think about his stream persona. And so they will naively think that like in every team he's in, he's just yelling all the time. And also, like one of the things I do think that he's done a very good job of branding this because it's great entertainment. You know, there's so many clips of him like whiffing AWP shots and then just like firing 5 more and no scopes and stuff. In a real match, he wouldn't really do that, presumably, right? What was Mo like if you cut out the persona and the stuff people see on stream? Just as a real teammate playing a proper competitive match, what's he like as a player?
So when we first started playing with him back in Source, this is like 2012, like end of 2011 at the time that I first started playing with him. And at the beginning of like CSGO, it's like streaming wasn't a thing. So he was a lot more like down to earth, humble. He was like a lot nicer. and he was like really fun to be around. Like he was funny. He was nice to be around. But then as streaming became a thing, and he was streaming and not playing competitively, I guess like the stream persona kind of took the better of him, and then it was like kind of hard to differentiate the two. So you'd be on for practice day, and you don't know if it's like stream mode or real mode that you're getting. And this is back in 2000, like beginning of 2015 into 2014, that we're trying to like do this Torqued thing, and you don't know what kind of mode you're going to get at that point, because like the streaming thing is kind of like taking over his life, and it's like influencing his own personality, his real life personality. I think now it's just all stream mode. Like there's no like old Mo left. Like whatever happened to old Mo, it's like stream mode just came and killed him, and now
he's like Vader now. Like Anakin's gone at this point,
Maybe there'll be some salvation at the end, but like right now he's just like full on stream mode. Like there's like I don't think like I can remember the last nice thing he's done for anyone. Like it's just fucked.
So is that real then, where you and him had this falling out, where you a million of back and forth lines and comments? Is that actually real? Because people think since you know each other for so long, like, okay, for example, I'll banter with people online sometimes to fuck with them, but sometimes they're people I do know, and behind the scenes we're all like, look at these idiots, and all think it's real, but that it's not. It's tongue in cheek. There's something to this sort of war with Mo now, right?
So like originally, like the first war we got into was like the whole issue with when he got banned for cheating from ESEA and everything. And that was kind of like, I was kind of like trying to message him and be like, yo, this is just a joke. Like, I'm like the video, like we were on an argument. He's like, I'm never going to talk to this guy again until he apologizes to me. So I made the video where I was like doing the apology, and I'm like, fuck you, Mo, like you lying, cheating scum, whatever. Like, that was kind of like we weren't planning it. It was like it wasn't planned drama, but it was just like in my mind it was like something that we could get over. But the latest drama type of thing was just like how my life's been going, and especially like the last 2.5, 3 years, it's been very difficult to stay friends with people that kind of like abuse your trust like that. And like I told Mo a lot of things. He knew a lot about me, and he would kind of use that as leverage or ammunition on stream. And I really didn't like that. And then like, I don't know what the fuck happened, but he's completely changed as a human. And he started like saying all this shit about me. Like I was a fake friend, and I only did this for money, or I only did this, like I was only his friend for money, or I was only his friend because of this or that. I'm like, this doesn't make sense, but I'm just going to stay the fuck out of it. It's not worth my time. It's not worth my mental health. It's stressing me the fuck out. I need to back the fuck up, because there were a lot of times, like dark moments, the last year and a bit, where I was like doing. I'm not going to say what I was doing, but it was not good.
Okay. Yes.
It wasn't good, and I was in a really dark place. And I feel like I've made big steps in the right direction since I've kind of like cut a lot of that out of my life. And like I only, the people that I am still friends with are the people that I'll be friends with for a long time, and the people that I used to be friends with that kind of abuse my trust. That's it. That's end of line.
Okay. So obviously, or as we've heard in this interview, you already had some ups and downs in CSGO anyway, some tough spots you were stuck in, but getting banned from the game essentially forever, that's a pretty tough pill to swallow, right? How does one actually respond when that happens? Because here's the thing. I always feel like people it's just such a polarizing topic that people think you have to do one or the other. You either have to focus on like the crime aspect and go like, what piece of shit, the worst people ever, no one should have any sympathy for them. Or people go the other way and also are like, let's excuse everything and let's just say, let's be really nice to them and sympathetic. And obviously it's very tough for their lives. What's a reasonable middle ground for you? How do you look back on that scenario now?
So I think you have to look at everything with context, and it's like what we did was morally, ethically wrong. It wasn't technically against the rules, but we knew going into it, this is like a wrong thing. Now, when you deal with anything in life, there should always be like, okay, you did this wrong thing, we will give you this punishment and you'll be able to kind of redeem yourself. You're going to be reintegrated into society after, you fucked up. You learned that you fucked up. You are a better person now after your punishment. You served your time and you've given back. You've given back. So when we let you back, if you're able to, give some good back into us, then, you've learned a lesson. We can move on with life. But it feels like everyone's just like all black and white about everything. It's like, you threw, you're bad, banned for life. Don't give them any second thought. Like, they're scum. They should be banned off Twitch. They shouldn't have any job prospects. People should fire them if they try to get a job. And you have the other people that are just like, yeah, well, there were no rules, so they should get unbanned. It's like, well, those are both extremes. And while I would, be happy if I never got punished, I don't think I would have learned from it as a human. And I think I've learned a lot the last couple of years as a person. I've learned and I've grown as a person, whether people can see it or not, because I get angry on stream. I guess I'm a bad human because I have anger issues. I'm sorry. And I get angry on stream because people are fucking idiots. Then, I still feel like I've learned a lot about giving people second chances, about understanding people and hardships. And I don't know if you've heard about this recently, but the Counter-Strike Clive guy, have you?
I had heard something along those lines, yeah.
Yeah, so this is going on YouTube. I don't think I can talk about what he did, but okay. Basically, he was someone that I think he gave back. Like, he did something that was bad, and whether or not he did it or not, whatever he was convicted for, he had a really severe punishment, and
sure, yes.
He got harassed constantly from it. Constantly, everywhere he went, even if he had made really good points and had good arguments, people would just keep bringing it up and harassing him about it.
It's the ultimate way to shut anything down, right? You did X, therefore we don't have to listen. Exactly.
So it was like the ultimate ad hominem, and everyone just shut down everything he said. But he tried reaching out to a lot of people, and you can see that he did. I was one of the people that he tried to encourage constantly. He tried to encourage me constantly and tell me I could do this with my life. I can do that. I can be better. I can, move forwards, and, life sucks sometimes, but, he was trying to give me that strength, and he did this for other people as well. And all that harassment and everywhere he went, it was just always people just making shit up just because people would believe it because of this other thing that happened in his life. And I think he was giving back enough and more than enough for people to give him a second chance, but people didn't give him that second chance. And now, he's gone and he can't do that anymore. And I think that's really sad. And I learned a lot from that as well. That was the one time that I've really felt I felt down and sad a lot, plenty of times, but I never felt kind of loss until I heard what happened to him. And I'm just damn, dude, this really changes my perception of life, and everything that's happened over the last 2 years has changed my perception of life. And it's all about giving people second chances and understanding people on a deeper level, and not just taking things at face value. Those are just really important life lessons that I've learned.
So obviously the timing of when the ban happened was exactly like we said, where you were all in on the Torque project and you were building that up, and you were still in a good position in your career. So it's different for some of the other players in the team, because maybe some of them played because it was fun, or it was a game they were good at, and maybe they had other things in life. Maybe they like AZK, I'll go play Overwatch now, or maybe there's other. But notably, with people like you and DaZeD, who have, say what you want in any other area, are very committed to Counter-Strike, and people who had been through tough times and times we didn't get paid much and just wanted to play the game. The easy option, in theory, should just be leave the game for a couple of years. Just go away. Don't let anyone hear from you. Let it all die down. But since you wanted to be in around the game, you've made your career around this. Did you ever think to yourself when the ban came in, should I just quit everything completely? Should I just disconnect from the internet? Was that ever an option?
When it first came in, it was I was more shocked than anything, and kind of in disbelief before I finally came to terms and this is actually real. At the time, I'd already been streaming, and I was relaunching a YouTube channel and everything like that. So I was kind of making strides to be in the scene, even if I couldn't play, and just hope for some good news a year from then type of thing. So I was definitely just CS was such a big part of my life at that point in time. I'd been playing it since 2008. It's the only thing I've like really truly enjoyed. I dropped out of university. I was studying psychology. I dropped out so I can travel to events and everything consistently. I worked in IT, which was enjoyable, but is it something I want to do for the rest of my life? Not really. So I was kind of just like working with my stream because I still enjoyed streaming at the time. Like, not to say I don't enjoy it now. So I was enjoying streaming at the time. I was enjoying making the YouTube videos. So it's something that I just continued with, and to see if anything would change, and hopefully something would change. I could get through to Valve, and I can like tell them like, hey man, I'm willing to do this and this. I want to be able to do good and give back so that I can have another chance at this. Like I fucked up. I made some bad decisions, and that's it. But I guess like I don't know. I never really thought about branching off into anything else until I guess Overwatch came, because I had such like everything was in, like as you said, like all my eggs were in one basket with Torqued. So like I was all in for esports. I was all in for this. And then I guess the only thing that changed was like Overwatch was another possibility. Hey, I could maybe go pro in another game. Let's try that. Will I have as much fun as I did in CS Source or CSGO? And I guess that was my next logical step. But I was kind of like sort of still in shock and hoping that the situation would change for a really long time.
Okay. So as you referenced there, like I know there's some that DaZeD thought as well. It's like, let's see if we can just get through to Valve. Like if I can just talk to someone or even just ask them something like, would it ever be possible the Unbanned? Obviously, people might not realize this, but it was actually Richard who had to do a lot of the legwork there, because he had like contact with them, and he would keep bringing it up and then ask, well, what does indefinite mean? Will it ever be reviewed, etc.? And it wasn't until a few years in actually that they basically said, well, when we say indefinite, we just have no plan to ever review it. So essentially that is forever, right?
Yeah.
So what do you actually make of that? Like, should there at least be some way that you kind of hear out your side of the story or hear what's happened since? Like, how do you weigh that up?
So I think if there's anything in life that you can learn through like from psychology and from other events in the past, is that if you give people a chance to appeal, and if you give a way back in, I think that really helps people change. And I think there needs to be an appeal system, and I think there is potential for people to learn from their mistakes and make sure that not only do they not repeat those mistakes, but they can set a positive influence on other people and say like, this is like, if I'm the guy that was banned for doing whatever, I can go and say like, guys, this is wrong. This is why it's wrong. This is how it impacts people. Kind of like a PSA type of thing, but like a wholehearted one. And I was saying things like, dude, I would, donate all my winnings away. And I actually did that for all of last year. I donated over 20,000 US. And like, I did that. I think this is the first time I've actually given the number. I might have mentioned the number to a couple of other people, but that was from like all the rank S winnings. And whenever people are seeing me bitching about rank S and everything and, trying to win first place, it's not so I could pocket the money. I gave it away. I wanted to give back. I knew I fucked up, and I kind of wanted to redeem myself. And I think it's important for, if you're going to set out a punishment, I think it's important for you to outline a way that you can get back in. Because if there's anything that just saying like, no, that's it, it's over, there's like nothing you can learn, then like if I knew it was permanent ban, there's nothing I could ever do to get back in. And maybe I had gone and done something else with my life, maybe I wouldn't have learned that valuable life lesson. Maybe I wouldn't be able to give back into the world some other things that are good. So I think there should definitely be a way back in, and an appeal system in place, and just something in place so that anyone who breaks or makes any infractions is able to learn from that experience and is able to kind of use that experience and knowledge to prevent it from happening again in the future by other people.
So it's funny when you say there that like initially you were just in shock, and it's kind of like you don't know really even what to do, like what to do with yourself, where it's going to go from here. The funny thing is, even I've found whenever people are in a state like that, they almost aren't even aware themselves that that's what's happening. They're just kind of like just going from moment to moment in kind of a daze, And what's funny is it's not until actually maybe like 6 months ago, 9 months ago, that I actually noticed that it seemed like DaZeD himself had even come to terms with this, because he's one of the people I know better, It seemed like it was a solid more than a year even, where he was just like, part of him was in disbelief and probably holding on to the hope that maybe they will unban us, or at least tell us when we're unbanned or something, And then it wasn't until eventually that like he before when he used to stream, you could tell sometimes he got like way too angry with it. Eventually, it felt like, you know, there was a switch that did get flipped, and he did kind of like accept, come to peace with what's going on, start to just enjoy the streaming aspect, realize like I'm never going to be able to be a pro. But then the funny thing is, in the middle of all this, suddenly this ESL news comes, which is, well, no, now you guys can play in ESL, and now everyone's like, wait, now I have to get back into the competitive mindset, etc. What was your thoughts when you heard this story that like ESL might unban you? Like, first of all, did you actually think, oh, maybe everyone except the majors will unban us and we can play all the tournaments? Is it that big a deal for you to even be allowed to compete in ESL?
Yeah, I think it is, because there's a lot of ESL events, like all the IEMs, the ESL in New York, the IEM Oaklands, like all the like EPL and whatever other ESL events that may happen throughout the course of the year. There's definitely a lot of opportunities, and it's definitely infinitely better than, you know, having no opportunities at all. Like, I was blacklisted from, you know, the smallest of events. I was blacklisted from like I-Series and ETS lands and everything. So I used to, you know, spend $1,000 to, you know, get a plane ticket to fly to the UK to play a shitty I-Series event where first place prize is like $5,000 type of thing, or not even that, even though they have like 60 teams signing up, paying 250 quid a piece, or like 500 quid a piece. So shit, I'm kind of losing my train of thought.
So this is like being allowed to play in ESL.
What's
the significance?
Yeah, there's a lot of significance. Like, there's a lot to play for, and I definitely I think it's going to help me and my mental state, just because it's going to be something that I can get back to enjoying again. I think I would like to be able to like flick that switch that DaZeD was able to flick, where I kind of still feel guilty. So when people harass me about it, like, I still feel bad about it. So like I feel bad about everything that's transpired, and it really affects me internally. And it's something that I can't really get out of my head. It's just like, it's just the way I am. Those are the thoughts that just always just hover around my head. So if I was able to flick that switch, believe me, I would fucking do that in a heartbeat. It's just something that I can't really just flick a switch and put it behind me. So I don't know, it's difficult. Like, streaming's become more and more difficult over time, because it just eats away gradually. So streaming has become more of like a chore than it is of something that I enjoy. Whereas when I first started streaming, I did it because I loved doing it. Like, I remember when I first started doing it, I had 30 viewers, and then I would play like Dota and I had 200 viewers. I'm like, holy shit. And then like CSGO came out, and CSGO streams were getting popular, and I had 1,000 viewers. I'm like, holy shit, like, this is really fun, exciting. Like, I'm making jack shit from it, but it's just really enjoyable. And now it's like, I can make money from it. I can make really comfortable living type of money from it, but it's something that it's become more of a chore type of thing, because you have people coming in and harassing and everything. And I think this ESL announcement, if I'm able to kind of go down this path and kind of stabilize myself emotionally, I think that it can be like the saving grace to my streaming career type of thing.
Even if you guys had all been, I mean, not unbanned by Valve, because that just seems so unrealistic at this point in time, but say everyone else had unbanned you and you could just play as players. Right. There's obviously no saying that all of you would be top players and in top teams and stuff, and no one can ever know where someone's going to be back who played, 3 years ago. Right. But one thing, especially for people like you and DaZeD, that obviously not the others, that was always an option, was as talent stuff's grown with on-camera stuff, desk analysts, people who are commentators, again observing, all these aspects have grown also in the time being. So that was always going to be an option. People like you and DaZeD, and people have seen DaZeD did EPL, etc., and he did ECS recently. Do you still feel as though there could be at least a world in the future where, okay, forget the playing part, maybe in the future other tournaments might just lift the ban on being an analyst, for example, so you could do events doing that, and that, I mean, that kind of feeds into what you do with your YouTube. Do you think this is a possibility?
I think beyond like the smaller independent events, like ECS has given us analyst roles, and EPL, so ESL and FACEIT basically. I think DaZeD casted out a DreamHack, so I think that's open. And then I know like Northern Arena would be open to things. I think. So I think there's definitely some opportunity, but you're gonna have places like E-League, you're gonna have the Valve majors that won't be open to that ever. And I still think there's enough opportunity there for after we're done as players, because, maybe we're not mechanically skilled enough, or, our time's passed or whatever, or maybe we're just getting too old, that we will be able to kind of branch off into other thing, whether it be in CSGO, maybe if it's like 3 years from now and it's a different game or a different esport or whatever, we're going to have the skill set that we developed here in CS and is, casting and observing CS events, we're going to be able to use those skill sets and apply them to other opportunities that we get.
Since, like you referenced, when Overwatch came out, just like AZK, you gave it a try. You were playing with some teams, trying to get into the early competitive scene. Since it's an obvious move, since you're not banned in those games, and in theory, if you turn out to be really good and you got on a good team, you can just start your career over again. Is that something you will continue to do? Like, do you love CS enough that ideally you just stay with CS, or if another game came out that you could hook onto something in it and become good, would you go fully into another game and try and be a pro, do you think?
If it was something, it has to share, like CS did a lot of things right. And I think that whatever game that came out would need to be able to do a lot of things right, just like CS did. So, PUBG, for example, I think is really enjoyable. I find it really fun, but there's no way to do some sort of like qualifier for an event. There's no way to do like an online regular season leading up to a LAN. So all the tournaments they're going to do, albeit they're going to be fun, you can't really how are invites going to be selected? You're going to invite random people. Do you do it because they have orgs, because they have brands? Like, is it going to be really politics sided, or is there a way to qualify for it? Like, if I'm at the top of the leaderboard, will I get an invite type of thing? So it would have to be something where you'd be able to have like a regular season. There would be like ways to qualify for events. It's not completely run politically, but then something that's strategically demanding. So Counter-Strike is something that requires a lot of strategy, and it's something that if you are a really good strategical team, you can beat a team of 5 people that are just like individually really mechanically skilled, just because you come together as a team, you're composed, you have good tactics and everything. So I like that. I like playing team games. I like playing with other people. I think solo games are fun, but I think they can wear you out and bore you down really quickly. So it'd have to be really similar to Counter-Strike in a lot of ways. And I don't think Overwatch was able to touch those ways. And there was a lot of politics involved in Overwatch as well.
So you've said that when people constantly reference, I mean, it's general negativity, but especially obviously they go to the ban. That's like they can't resist going to that as the insult, When they do when they do that again and again and again, as they're obviously going to, because a lot of them are like idiots and 16-year-olds and just antisocial people online.
Right.
You said that it does bother you. Like, it's not something, you're not trying to play it cool. Like, I don't care about that shit,
Right.
I've noticed you yourself do reference the fact that you're banned and the fact that all these things, quite a lot compared to the other people even involved in that situation. Some of them, for example, just never mentioned it ever, just went on with their lives and they're banned, but they never reference it. Are you able on some level to get past it and be like, that is in the past now, it was a number of years ago, I'm moving on, this isn't anything to do with me now? Is it still always there somehow?
I'd love to be able to just walk away from it. I'd love to be able to. If someone out there knows how I can, I probably know the way, and it's probably like through like therapy or some shit like that, because I have a whole bunch of underlying issues from childhood, and I have the chemical imbalance and shit through genetics. It's it's going to be a part of me, and I'd love to be able to walk away from it, but I don't think it's something that in short term it's not something I'm going to be able to walk away from. Maybe long term, hopefully, if it all goes well over the next couple of years, it's something I can start to walk away from. But in the near future, it's probably fucked.
So the funny thing is, when the CSL unbanning announcement came along, and everyone was focused on what will the core of the iBUYPOWER ones do, we're going to play together. Everyone was looking at that team and they were like, right, who can they get as their other players? And obviously that's the trouble for them, is anyone they get either has to be like such a raw talent, they didn't have any spot on a top team, or it has to be someone else in a weird situation where for some reason they can't play in a top team. And so people, again, because they just don't know your history, would think for you that you're just not trying to play properly. But actually, in a bizarre kind of turn of events, the fact that so many of your old teammates had kind of like disappeared from CSGO competitively and were just in the game, but has actually left you in a situation where you've kind of got the teammates you'd like to play with, right? So what's the current status for Steel in terms of competitively and what you're trying to do with the team? Like, had these guys actually fully gone from CS? Did they still keep their foot in a little bit? What's it like actually essentially getting to rebuild almost the team you played with?
So TCK jokes about like taking the band with me, because like
I've seen him say that, yeah.
Yeah, because he's taken, like, he's had offers from other pro teams and he's just like turned it down because he just doesn't want to play with any of them. He wants to play with me and he wants to play with the other teammates that we have. So Monty, I think like after we got banned, he took like a break, and then he started playing again sometime like several months ago. He played last season of MDL. And he was playing on the team with 4Shot. 4Shot's another player that we knew back in CS Source. He never really was on a top team or anything. And CSGO, he really wasn't around either. I don't remember when he came back into the game, but I think it was around the time before he got banned and then after he got banned for a year from ESEA. And then A2Z is someone that we met in CSGO. And he's just like kind of like-minded, same type of personality, same type of outlook on the game and kind of approach to the game and approach to practice. So, you know, I guess he was adopted into the Torqued family, if you want to kind of put it that way. And I think it's working out really well with those guys just because, you know, A2Z, he's kind of, again, like he's been on some pro teams. He's had offers from pro teams. He's kind of been around like the new Rogue team. He was playing with them when they were Enigma 6 last season before he got cut for Hiko so that they could get a sponsorship or whatever. So I know like they've been around, they've been keeping up, they've been playing Rank S or they've been pugging or they've been playing in like MDL or something. So they've kind of been around, they've been around the scene, they've been watching the games at the very least. So it's not like they've took like a full-on like cold turkey break from the game. They've been around.
If you could, obviously success is its own reward. Like you win money, you get to be the best, etc. But if you can do something in these ESL tournaments and any other tournaments that you're unbanned from with this new team, will there be like a special satisfaction in that you actually can compete again and potentially do something?
Yeah, I think we can do well. I want to play, like we're taking practice really seriously at the moment. I mean, maybe like not super duper seriously because we have another event. We're playing the World Gaming event and we can't use one of our players because he's in New Jersey. So after that, we have MDL, which doesn't start for like another month and a bit. But once MDL starts rolling around and as soon as we're able to qualify for other events like IEM Oakland, I think we're going to really focus on that hardcore. And I think that we have a pretty decent chance of moving up the chain in the, you know, domestically. I think we have a really good chance to be one of the top teams if we continue at it. I just see like the practice regimen from all the other teams and I'm not impressed at all. I see so many players that are individually, mechanically so skilled that just drop the ball over and over again. And it's because of how they practice. It's because how they are as teammates and it's because of their egos and because of all of these things that happen behind the scenes. When people see you making like educationally themed videos, rants on different topics to do with CS, and that's obviously a theme of what part of your streaming persona as well, to tell people like that's not how you do things, like it's how you do it instead. It's very, someone who's a hater might naively just be like, oh, well, he does that because he gets money. You know, you get ad revenue, you get fame from it. But I can tell you as someone who's done those sorts of things myself, it takes a long time before the money, etc., really kicks in to the point where that's the reward, you know. That's like, actually, that's like a bonus later once you've really built it up, you know. So to me, I never really buy that angle. Like, no one's really that cynical. Odds are there's something motivating, something you want to say, something you want to do. So what is it? What drives you to want to do the educational aspect of the game? It triggers me when I see like the wrong things or things that I think are wrong kind of just like spread around as if it's like a fact. Like, this is the way that you should do it. No, this is like a completely inefficient way of doing this. It's like, I don't know. I just have these impulses. It's like if I'm somewhere, like if I'm at my dad's house, for example, and I see like the dishwasher, I'm going to go put like a bowl or like I eat something and I put the plate or the bowl in the dishwasher. And I see like the forks are like in a really inefficient way where like the water's not going to flow through and they're like half of them aren't going to get cleaned. Like, I need to go and like change it around. You know, it might be like a mild form of OCD or something, but like I need to fix it. I need to make sure that it's efficient. You know, there's no sense in just like putting it through the wash cycle, coming out and it's like, oh shit, half it didn't get cleaned. Yeah, do it properly the first time. So it's something that it's kind of like an impulse to do it. It's not something it's like, man, I really want some views, so I'm going to do this thing because it's controversial. I do it because it's something like I'll be reading through Reddit. And I used to, when I was like coming up in the scene, I used to like sit on the ESA forums all the time and the CADRED and then HLTV. Like, it's just something I did. Now I just, you know, browse Reddit mindlessly and I just see some of the dumbest shit ever. And like I'll be seeing stuff that some people write, and it'll just get to a point where it's like, okay, I'm just sitting back, I'm relaxed, I'm not doing anything, and then I'll just be like, how the fuck is this upvoted with hundreds of upvotes? Like this is just wrong or inaccurate or this or that, and I have to do something. It's like something just overcomes me. I get triggered, and I'm just like, fuck, I'm doing this now. It's not like I sit there premeditating like, what is gonna get me the most views?
So, especially in the early days of like Source and 1.6, I actually knew a whole bunch of players who were like wildly talented at the game, and that is basically the only reason they played the game. Whenever they played it when they were beginning players, they had some aptitude for it, they got on a couple of teams, it worked out well, and then while they're at the top, they're like, okay, well obviously it's fun to win money and be famous to some degree, so they would do that, and when it went badly, they retired. Some of them even just walked away even when they were winning. I've seen people do that before. And a lot of these people, if you really boiled it down, they didn't really love Counter-Strike the game. They sort of liked it, and then they liked competition, and then maybe they liked to win, okay? But it seems like, as obviously no one can really be like a lifer in Counter-Strike because the game's only been out like 20 years total for the whole game or whatever, but it seems like there's something keeps drawing you back to Counter-Strike. Something keeps you in the game, keeps you playing. What's appealing about Counter-Strike as a game for you?
I think there's a lot of appealing parts of the game, and I touched on them a little bit earlier, but I think having it something be team-based, strategical based, that's not heavily RNG influenced, something where you kind of like have control over what happens for the most part. I think those are things that really keep me involved with the game. Something that's like not super unreal, like Call of Duty. It's like, okay, there's no economy in it, and then like the guns are easy to use. There's like barely any recoil, so things like that. I like the concept of you have enough time to work with to kind of play with fakes and do really deep strategical plays, but at the same time, it's not you don't feel rushed like CGS round time type of thing where you have like a minute 20 seconds to do everything, where you just basically just full buy and rush everywhere. Like I think there's a good balance in strategy and individual skill and teamwork. I think it's a really delicate balance, and I think that it was better in 1.6 and it was better in Source than it is in CSGO. But I think that CSGO retains it, and it's the right now of all the other esports. I mean, like Dota, I might enjoy Dota, but I don't know. Like I like the FPS element of it as well. So I think it just hits everything in a specific way that I just enjoy it. And I don't think that there's going to be anything in, maybe like Rainbow Six Siege if it takes off. I've never played it, but people say like, oh, this is like a really tactical type of game. And I like those tactical type of games. Like when StarCraft 2 Wings of Liberty was at the forefront of esports, and it's like everyone's talking about it. You go to Twitch and it's a StarCraft 2 tournament, and it's got tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of viewers. I loved watching it. I loved playing it. I was a Masters levels Terran player, and I loved playing it. But Counter-Strike is something that both I enjoy and I'm good at. StarCraft is something I enjoyed, but I wasn't that great at. Maybe if I practiced 8 hours a day, I could have been, but Counter-Strike is something that I've been at that level at before. So it's something that, it's a part of me now. It's not like I played it and it's, it was just like a part of my past. It's like, it's still a part of me.
The NA CSGO scene is in a very strange place at the moment because if you look, they've basically got rid of almost every veteran player now. Like even the Sean Gares of the world he's not really on the top team. He's not on the Cloud9s, the Team Liquids. It's like the lunatics have taken over the asylum. All the young aimers and the young skilled players, and some of them are very skilled players. There's tons of them now. I mean, back in the day, obviously, there was only a few and you had to work with whoever was there. There's tons of them, but it feels like there's almost no leaders, or if they are, they're the DAPs and the FNS of the world who are shoved off to one side, And the top teams are just all these, like Team Liquid's the worst example for me, because they just kept stacking like star player names on top of each other, having the same failures, and then going, need a better star player in this team. Like they never got the cerebral side of the game. So What do you make of the NA scene at the moment?
I think it's a bit of a mess, and I think that people need to start really prioritizing and like giving value to in-game leaders, or more value to in-game leaders. Coaches that aren't like, they don't necessarily have to be really analytically minded coaches, but someone that can get you to get on track with your practice and be like, okay, you need to, do this during practice. These are your goals as individuals. This is your goal as a team. This is how you should kind of delegate your time. You should go over the demo from last night's match first, and then you should go into the server and talk about like the theory behind everything that you just watched, and then you should dry run everything, and you should do drills in-house, and then you should get the scrims. And I think that that's kind of important these days. If you don't have an in-game leader that can do that, and you look at like the Virtus Pros of the world that, they've been around for so long that they do it themselves, they might not need a coach to do it. But then you have all these like 17, 18-year-old teams where like you have the average age of the players like 17 or 18 years old on a team. They need that person, that leader, that coach, that manager, someone that's going to be like, look, I know how to get to this point because I've been there before, and this is the type of hard work that you have to put in, and this is, it's a long and hard path. It's not something that's just like, okay, you've got to EPL, you're a pro league player, salaried, great, but that's not even half the battle. The other half or more of the battle is all the hard work that you're going to do from this point on. And I think a lot of people just they're afraid to put in that hard work. They don't know how to do it because they're inexperienced, or they got to such a high level at such a young age that, it's gone to their head and they're egotistical and they think they're better than they actually are. And they think like there's nothing more that they can learn type of thing. So I think there's a lot of issues with it. And I think there's also a cultural issue within North America. You look at Korea, for example, in StarCraft, and you have this entire culture behind like selflessness, and you have like humbleness and everything, and you have these Korean teams just so dominant at that game, at StarCraft, and select other games as well. And then Europe is more selfless as well. But then you go to North America and it's like, who's got the bigger dick? Who's got the bigger car? Who's got the bigger house? Who's got the bigger food? Who's got the bigger ass? Like, everything just needs to be bigger and better. It's like a dick measuring contest constantly in North America. And it's like, you want to be this jock. You want, like, people who play video games are nerds, and nerds aren't cool. And you have this mentality and this mindset going into things that all the people that come to play video games, I don't know, this might be a like completely wrong theory, but this is what I believe. You have a lot of people that go to video games for a reason, and it could be like it's an escape for them. It's like, something's not good at home, something's not good at school, they're moving constantly, they're getting bullied, whatever the case may be. They turn to CS, they become good at it, they go to compete in it, but they haven't really learned how to do anything else in life because they're still really young and they haven't experienced a lot of things. And I think that you need someone to really provide that structure, and that structure is missing. And I think that type of structure and foundation is what will change a team from being like this team full of like talented star players that can't win anything to a team that's full of talented young star players that now know what to do, know what it takes to win, and is willing to put in the hard work to see that entire process through. The demo watching, the dry running, the drills, the theory crafting, the everything. It's part of a process, a larger process. And if they're their only goal is to just play and that's it, they're not going to go anywhere. They need to do everything, and if they can't find the reward, like the dopamine reward or whatever from doing all these other things, then they're never going to be a top player for a consistent period of time, and they're going to get replaced in maybe it's 6 months, maybe it's a year. They're going to get replaced, they're going to get bumped down to like a complexity level team, and then they're going to fade away.
At the end of the interview, do you have a final message you want to leave with people, or someone you want to thank, or someone you want to say hello to? I don't have any like specific things I want to say. I just want to say things will happen in life, and you should be open-minded and give people second chances. And also, I may have done something wrong, but everyone's got their skeletons. Mine just happened to be out of the closet. Okay, good note to end it on.